When continuous acts of violence occur, casualties are inevitable, but the problem lies in the fact that people often struggle to control their emotions, greed, and envy. Becoming comfortable with things that do not belong to you can make you pay a very heavy price, sometimes even your life. Tulsa, Oklahoma, 1:27 p.m. The phone at the police headquarters hotline rings. The caller is a woman who sounds panicked and terrified. "Someone has just been shot multiple times here. He's not breathing anymore. Please come quickly." A man, shot multiple times, was found dead in his own home by a neighbor in the morning, in a residential area that was considered peaceful, where unusual events were rare. The police prepared themselves mentally and quickly arrived at the scene. Every homicide case has a golden window the first 48 hours. During this time, the evidence is fresh and witnesses are more accessible. If the case is not solved within this period, the chances of finding the killer drop significantly. Time is running out. Medical examiners confirmed the victim was dead. The victim is African American. The cause of death is confirmed as massive blood loss, with 6 gunshot wounds all over the body. The killer clearly acted with intent and likely had a grudge or hostility toward the victim. The body was then taken for forensic testing to gather more clues. Spent shell casings left at the scene were collected one by one. It's the common type of bullets used in handguns widely used in violent, armed crimes. The main door of the house showed no signs of forced entry. All windows and other doors were intact, with no signs of being tampered with or climbed through, suggesting that the killer either had a key to the house or the victim opened the door for the killer. The victim and the killer likely knew each other. After surveying the house, police confirmed that the victim lived alone with no signs of any other occupants. A fingerprint-locked bedroom, a messy pillow, and a disorganized closet were noted. Furthermore, there was an important clue inside the victim's bedroom. Something is off here. There's a plastic bag containing a large number of colorful pills and a bag of white powder suspected to be synthetic drugs. Send it to the lab immediately for testing. The victim was likely involved in illegal drug storage and distribution. Shortly thereafter, the victim's identity was confirmed, further solidifying the police's suspicion. The victim was identified as Terrell Collins, 28 years old, with a history of criminal involvement and ties to local gangs. He was arrested once 3 years ago for armed assault and released a year later. After being under surveillance for a while, he showed no further criminal behavior, so he was let off the radar and moved to this area almost a year ago. Detective Ritter, assigned as the lead investigator on the case, determined that this might be a hit or an act of revenge. Outside the house, neighbors stood behind the police barricade, anxiously watching the situation unfold, as if hoping to gather any small bits of information from the police that might ease their worries. Most of them were reluctant when the police approached them to gather statements, but they knew they had to share what they knew if they wanted the case to be solved quickly, and to understand if their neighborhood could ever be as safe as it once was. The police promptly approached the witnesses. The first was Emily, 54, who lived next door to the victim's house, and was the one who had called the police. "I was getting ready for bed when suddenly I heard a series of loud bangs coming from the house next door. Then I looked out the window and saw a black car speeding out of the gate. My husband and I didn't know what was going on, so we went outside to check. Others also started coming out of their houses. When we went to his yard, the front door was wide open, and we saw him lying motionless on the living room floor, with blood everywhere." Do you recall anything else about the car or anything that happened before the incident? Both Emily and her husband couldn't remember the make or license plate of the car. Everything happened so fast. All we saw was the car speeding down the street toward the highway. Before this, people would occasionally come over to his house, but they'd usually go inside. There was one man with an unpleasant expression. He came by a few days ago and left angrily, cursing about something. The man who lived in that house wasn't very friendly and didn't interact much, so we didn't pay much attention to him. Meanwhile, another man provided additional useful information. It was a black sedan with a local license plate. I saw the car while I was walking home from the bus stop after work. It was parked rather haphazardly near the front door, around half an hour before the gunshots. A fairly tall man with blonde hair stood outside, pressing the doorbell for a while before the African-American man opened the door and let him in. The person living in that house wasn't friendly. I didn't pay him much attention until I saw a stranger frequently showing up in the neighborhood, using profanity and disturbing the peace around here. I just hope you can resolve this quickly so the neighborhood can return to its peaceful state. Based on the witnesses' statements, the police began tracking down the vehicle that had left the crime scene. This residential area lacked surveillance cameras, and most cameras from nearby houses couldn't capture a clear image of the license plate, so the police could only estimate the time the vehicle left and track it through cameras on the main road at intersections leading to the highway. Given the many possible exits from the victim's area, this approach posed significant challenges. The tech department began working tirelessly to review the footage from various intersections. Simultaneously, the police started investigating the victim's contacts. He had numerous phone numbers saved, though most were not listed under names. Some numbers were blacklisted, including one that had attempted to contact him multiple times before being blocked, but he didn't answer any of the calls. The message history was wiped clean. Any details of illegal transactions had likely been deleted or backed up to another device before deletion. He had grown a lot more careful than in the past. During his previous arrest, he was caught and his phone was inspected, so he had become diligent about deleting evidence. However, this may have inadvertently helped his killer evade suspicion. From the victim's credit history, the police discovered he frequently visited a popular hangout spot nearby and had made a large, unusual transaction there 2 days ago. We need to get to that place immediately. It could provide additional clues. The police promptly arrived at the location, a bar in the neighborhood. The bartender immediately recognized Terrell. "He's a regular here. He was just here 2 days ago, and for the first time he spent a significant amount. A few people challenged him, and he paid for their drinks before leaving. It was around 10 p.m. at the time." Reviewing the bar's footage from that night, the victim's image was captured clearly. Detective Ritter watched the video several times and noticed something suspicious. Right after Terrell left the bar, another man followed him out immediately. "Do you recognize this man?" "No, he seems like someone who was here for the first time. I don't remember him at all." At the same time, the investigative team, through local traffic cameras, identified the license plate of the vehicle. The license plate belonged to Darnell Jenkins, a man with a history of violent crime and known to be a member of a local gang. This information matched the suspicions about the victim's involvement in conflicts. Ritter immediately issued a warrant for Jenkins' arrest for questioning. Information about his residence and contacts was quickly found. He lived alone in a small rental house on the east side of the city, registered under unemployment benefits. The task force was assigned to covertly monitor the house. The car has been spotted parked outside the house, and it's confirmed to be the one from the crime scene. The large black tinted windows on the house could be one-way glass, so we need to proceed cautiously. The suspect was seen entering the house about 5 minutes ago and is still inside. Prepare to move in. Darnell was lying on the sofa with his phone, watching through the large front window. Although the police were in position, his line of sight allowed him to see everything happening outside. He began to panic, grabbed the gun tucked into his waistband, and hurriedly opened the door leading to the garage. "All units, proceed with the raid." The police stormed the front door just as the car engine started. 4 officers stationed at the gate assessed the situation and immediately blocked the car. Gunshots erupted. The police fired at the tires, deflating them, but Darnell still tried to drive forward and rammed them. His other hand was ready with a gun, prepared to attack. "He's injured," one of the officers. "Stop him immediately." In this critical situation, the police focused their efforts on immobilizing the car with continuous shots aimed at the tires, which caused a loud bang. Darnell was forced to get out of the car and attempted to flee. But he couldn't outmatch the police and was quickly subdued. Handcuffs were slapped onto his wrists, and he was immediately taken to headquarters for questioning. During a search of Darnell's house, the police found a large quantity of white and colored powder substances. The room reeks of a strong odor. He's been producing synthetic drugs. We found drug manufacturing equipment along with a significant amount of powdered marijuana and other powdered drugs. In the interrogation room, Darnell denied all accusations. Marijuana doesn't just appear in your house on its own, and you couldn't have lived there for an entire year without knowing about its existence. So just confess. Is that why you killed Terrell? I didn't kill him. Yeah, I produced marijuana, but I don't even know who Terrell is. So how do you explain your car being at the crime scene? I didn't kill him. Witnesses are willing to testify in court. Your car was seen at the crime scene at the time of the murder. We have footage of the car, and more importantly, you were still driving it while fleeing from the police today. There was too much convincing evidence, and Darnell knew that if he didn't tell the truth, he would certainly face even more charges. Resisting arrest, injuring a police officer, manufacturing and dealing drugs, plus the murder charge, all of that would definitely end his life completely. I didn't kill anyone. I only produced a small amount of drugs for personal use, and I used them myself. I didn't deal with anyone, and I bought the ingredients from the black market because it was cheaper. I'm unemployed, but I can't live without the drugs. What about the car? Who drove it on the day of the murder? A friend of mine. I lent him the car, but I don't know anything else. I had no idea it was involved in a murder. After being cornered by undeniable evidence, Jenkins finally admitted that he had lent the car to a friend on the night of the crime. This friend was Marcus Lee, a man who had a serious conflict with the victim, Terrell Collins. Marcus's information quickly appeared on the screen. He had no prior criminal record. As for Darnell, the drugs he produced matched the drugs found in the victim's home, proving that he had been involved in the illegal drug trade after manufacturing them. His fate was sealed, and he could not escape the crimes he had committed. As for Marcus, information about him was swiftly confirmed. Marcus's image appeared on the computer screen, and Detective Ritter immediately recognized him as the man who had chased Terrell out of the bar 2 days before the murder. An arrest warrant for Marcus was quickly issued, and the investigative team began their pursuit. He was an armed criminal living with his family of 4, which included a wife and 2 small children. Be careful with the woman and the children. We need to gather information about them and ensure they are not home during the arrest to avoid interfering with our operation. A team of police officers was assigned to disguise themselves and approach the house while others kept watch outside. The doorbell rang, and Marcus's wife opened the door. The 2 children had already been taken to safety. The police immediately entered, and the frightened children cried loudly while the wife trembled, trying to remain calm. Marcus isn't here. He left home last night with all his clothes and belongings. I don't know where he is now. Despite the wife's statements, the officers, following orders, proceeded to search the entire house. Report no suspect found in the house, no drugs or other weapons. Marcus had indeed fled. Do you have any idea where he might be? I don't know, maybe the bar, some night market, or at the home of his bad friends. He never told me where he was going. After confirming that there were no hiding places left in the house and that Marcus was indeed not there, the police began to withdraw. Detective Ritter stayed behind with his wife and children, borrowing the wife's phone to call him. However, the phone only rang once before disconnecting. Under suspicion, Detective Ritter returned the phone to the woman and left. Keep a close watch on the house. He will likely return or contact his wife. We need to find information about his credit card and the camera footage around his house to determine which direction he left. Photos showed the couple looking very happy together. Although the wife trembled with fear when the police burst in, she didn't seem surprised at all, as if she had mentally prepared for this. In such cases, she surely knew what was happening and still maintained contact with her husband. The reason he didn't answer might be due to some circumstance, but it was also highly possible that he knew the caller wasn't his wife, or that the police had not yet withdrawn. One of their 2 children was just over 2 months old, so he would likely still be lurking nearby and hadn't gone too far. An undercover police team was assigned to stay and monitor the house and the woman. Meanwhile, the suspect's credit history indicated that after the crime, he had withdrawn a large sum of money before disappearing, clearly preparing for this situation. Surveillance footage from around the house and from neighboring houses was also collected. The investigation team diligently reviewed the extracted footage to track the suspect's movements. After nearly a day of searching, they finally found a video showing that Marcus had indeed left the house with a backpack the evening after the crime occurred, just shortly before the police arrived to look for him. In another camera's footage, he was seen walking to a nearby motel and entering it. Here it is, a budget hotel on the street next to his house. Let's proceed with the arrest. The investigation team quickly approached the hotel and gathered crucial information from the front desk. Marcus was indeed very close to his home. The hotel staff cooperated by providing his room number and leading the police to where he was hiding. Marcus opened the door for room service in a defensive posture with a gun hidden behind his back. Upon seeing the police, he immediately tried to close the door but was too late. The police force overwhelmed him, and being on the 5th floor left him with no way to escape. Filled with rage, Marcus raised the gun to his own head, threatening to kill himself on the spot if the police did not leave. Detective Ritter stepped forward to persuade him, mentioning his wife and 2 children. Even if Marcus feared dying or going to prison, the fact that he had killed someone was undeniable. But if he feared death and felt no remorse, then no one would ever forgive him. He would never have the chance to make amends, and that irresponsible act would cause even more pain for his wife and children. After being persuaded, Marcus lowered his weapon and surrendered. The police handcuffed him and took him to headquarters. In the interrogation room, Marcus admitted to his guilt, hoping for leniency. "I didn't mean to kill him. I knew he was a notorious drug dealer and armed, so I bought a gun for protection. But I lost control of my emotions. He was a despicable man. He and Jenkins were involved in drug dealing, and I was their transporter. Sometimes they even asked me to deliver to other places. After my former company fired me, I had to find money to support my family, but everything was too difficult. My wife had just given birth, I couldn't let them starve, so I went down that path. But then Terrell didn't pay me. He sold more drugs and started partying day and night. He threatened to kill me if I dared to report him. I had no choice but to threaten him back, but I lost control." The case was closed with Marcus's confession, and those involved were held accountable under the law. Even though Terrell had committed many crimes against society, no matter how deserving of death he might have been, only the law could convict and judge a person. Regardless of how pitiable Marcus might be, or how hard he tried to justify his actions, wrongdoing remains wrongdoing. He had aided those who corrupt society, and was also guilty of taking a life himself. The children would no longer see their father every day, and would lose the happiness of a complete family. No matter how much the wife hoped for a better life, she wanted her husband to live in peace. In the end, Marcus heard his wife's heartfelt words. She always loved him. And even after learning about everything he had done, she still loved Marcus. However, if she had the chance to stop him before it all began, she would rather be busy and struggle a bit than see her husband become a criminal in anyone's eyes. A significant life lesson was learned through pain and loss. The battle for justice is long and ongoing, the police work will continue, and evil will surely be brought to light. Mistakes must be paid for, whether one wants to or not.